Alright, so I've been off the internet for a very long time. Like, I thought I'd be able to keep up the internet and do my temp job at the same time, but nah, it was a lot of hours. So I kind of just took time to take a nap, but I took a long, long time to just sleep and get rejuvenated, right? So I still want to work on being multifaceted. That's one of my goals. That's why I work on so many different things. Like that's why I haven't defined a niche on social media. But I still want to have conversations. And one of the conversations and talks, I want to have like a high level talking conversation today. And this is for people who want to be entrepreneurs or work in highly competitive fields. So I haven't thought of what I want to call this yet. Because this is for men and for women. Because I've started doing something where I did high level conversations for women, but it was a voice recording. I didn't make it into a video. I was gonna make my voice recordings into videos, but I didn't. I might just go through my voice recordings and just make them videos, or make a podcast out of them. I was thinking of making a podcast out of them. Tell me what you think. Should I make it a podcast? Like I want to make a couple of different ones, but yeah, but so I started these high level conversations and talks for people who want to work in highly competitive fields. And I especially want to reach out to people who are not used to having access to certain things, and then you gain the access even though you never had it, and it's different for you and it's changing your life because you had access to things that you never thought. Or people who, decided to get into humanitarian fields and saw a different lifestyle and saw the way that how extreme poverty can get in the world, and you wanted to make like people who are dealing with highly competitive challenges in this world. These are things I feel like can work for you. Hopefully, I'm not perfect. I just analyze and I feel like I can wear many different hats. So I wanted to try to make a lifestyle out of that. And I want to reach out to people who feel the same way, even if you don't want to wear multiple hats and work in multiple fields. Like even if you just want to work in a highly competitive field, like I said before. But I want to talk about a few different things today. I want to talk about the art of body language and conversation, right? So for my body language right now, people who analyze body language can tell that I'm nervous. Yes, I'm very, very nervous. And it's just because I actually really care about making this thing work, right? So that's what my nervous body language is about, right? But I'm having this conversation with you despite being nervous because I actually genuinely want to help people, right? After working, I went home for a couple days, took a rest. Now I kind of went to a hotel so I can just get some time away to do social media. But yeah, body language and conversation, right? You can tell based on somebody's eye contact, the way they might fidget, the way they're standing. Are their shoulders up, straight? Are they looking directly at you? Do they seem confident? Are they more slouched? Are they down? Are they looking away? Not looking at you the whole time? Fiddling with a pen? Like, all that stuff matters when you're talking to somebody, and especially if you're talking to somebody that could advance your opportunities. The way you present yourself and your body language matters, right? I used to be so gung-ho on being like, oh, if you're a good person and you work hard, it doesn't matter what you look like, right? And you can just show up and people will see that. People don't always see that. No, they don't. Some people do. Some people do absolutely see that. And I was doing some of my mental work walks, and I was thinking about this time where I was in the city and I seen this guy. And this happens more often than not. This guy was homeless, right? But he used to also work for the New York Stock Exchange, right? So by the way he presented himself, you would have thought that he never saw that kind of access and capital, but he also was still friends with someone who was working there. And this person, they didn't dress up, they didn't wear name brand, they were shopping at Salvation Army. He would just drop off, give him stuff, give him food, give him, like, there are so many different interactions and encounters that I've seen, like just going through the city and everything. Actually, that's another thing. I want to go to the city, but you never know who somebody can be, especially in a big city. Even if they don't look flashy, you never know. They could have a enormous amount of capital behind them, and even if they do look flashy, they could be broke, just trying to look hood rich or something. So there's also the art of double talk, right? Because, like, someone can be having a conversation, right? And to you, it seems one way, but they could be talking about something completely they could be talking about the thing you think they're talking about. But they could also be talking about something you don't even know that they're talking about, because you're not tapped in to their level of conversation and their level of understanding, or that social structure, right? So when you understand social structure and you understand how things play with power dynamics, and especially on a job with who's in the know, that's how you understand the social structure. Like, who's the first to know, who's the last to know, who looks like they're keeping secrets all day, but who also looks like the higher ups are counting on them, and who looks like you shouldn't even be here, like, who looks like they're looking at you like you shouldn't even be here, right? And even though you might be on the level of the person where they're like, why are you in this conversation, you shouldn't be here, but if they notice that you notice the information. Here's a tip and a trick for people who are trying to I'm not going to say social climb, but we live in a day and age of social climbing, right? We just can do it through the internet, right? But people who are trying to, like, climb up in the company, right? If you are around and you hear sensitive information, you will be tested with the sensitive information. If you go around and start gossiping, spreading panic and stuff, that's gonna be a mental note to your higher ups. Oh, I don't think I can trust this person with sensitive information, right? But if you listen to what they're saying, and they might drop hints for the instructions of how the information should go. Like, I don't want anybody hearing this. Even if you're not supposed to be hearing this and you heard this conversation, this needs to not leave this room. If this leaves this room, there's going to be serious consequences. Take that in mind, right? They might say something like that, or they might be a little bit more loose with it. Like, let's test and see what happens with if lips are loose or tight, and leave it as loose as that, and you don't understand what that means. So if you can understand the social structure through energy, the way a person walks, the way that people regard them, the way a person respects them. You can understand who might be about to be getting a promotion, who's kissing up to try to get a promotion, and who's not even really considering themselves for a promotion but might be being considered anyway, right? And usually that humble candidate doesn't even realize what's happening, but then they'll get stuff thrown at them so they can be tested, right? But that's when people start to, like, whatever company you work for, there are always people watching, whether it's the big boss or the assistant boss or managers or whatever. People are always watching on whatever field it is. No matter what field it is, people are always watching. People always talk, and you never know who knows what. Though that is the law of the 6 degrees of separation. 6 degrees of separation is, no matter what industry you're getting in, watch how you conduct yourself and who you're talking to, because everybody knows someone and something. You never know. And then sometimes, even if you do conduct yourself good, some people might just personally not like you and purposely not spread a good word for you. They might give you like some mediocre backhand review where it's like, oh yeah, that person didn't get along with them. But if they know how that person is toward, like, it takes a couple of people to know how a person is toward people. And if it's a person that's like usually like that toward people and they're like, yeah, that person's usually like that, then that's But sometimes it's not the case where you make somebody upset that can have major decisions and pull on how things go, right? This is across the board, no matter what industry, highly competitive field, whether it's a lawyer, a doctor, whether it's baseball, football, something entertaining, whether it's something in the medical field, a chef, like a high-end first class Michelin star chef, because that's very competitive. No matter what you're driven, there's so many different high-level fields in this world. If you take this world all throughout the globe, just throughout this continent alone, there's a lot of stuff. But if you take the world by itself, all the world as a whole, there are millions of different ways that you can up your life. Sometimes you might even need to change areas because it's not whatever you're looking for might not be there, right? But that's where you try to fine tune, and you got to find your sense of company culture. What are you looking for in terms of sense of company culture, right? Where do you feel like you can fit in at? Based on the code of ethics, do you feel like this is something that you can get down with? And then sometimes you got to do the company culture versus the group ethics, right? So it's like, all right, the company culture is one way, but there are like 7 different groups because they all operate a different way. And in order to keep the company running, these 7 groups have to keep running this way because it's not exactly aligned with the company culture. Or is it a company culture where it's like it's exactly what it said it's supposed to be? And we live in a world where things are not always exactly what they're made out to be across the board. So that's when you have to understand the art of intention. Do you feel like this company's intention is good for the intention that you have for yourself and the way that you see your life? Do you feel like even if you don't feel like your intentions are to stay somewhere long term, do you feel like you're in a place where this company's culture can teach you something about what you want? I was the type of person where I could be working as a fry cook at a fast food restaurant, and I would study and I would study the affiliate program, and I would study how the person who founded the company set up the affiliate program. Right? Just to keep myself interested. Like, what can I learn from working in fast food? I'm going to learn something. So that's a test for people who, even if you're working in fast food right now and you have high level competitive aspirations, test yourself in highly competitive ways. How did the founder and the company of your establishment set up the company? How did they set up the affiliate program? How is their pyramid work? How does their company structure work? Is it based in a pyramid scheme? Is it based in a co-proprietorship field? Do they make most of their money off of the affiliate program? Is it just a local affiliate program? Is it an international affiliate program? What is the mission statement of the founder of the company? Do they have any scandals attached? What was their biggest bankroll year? What was their biggest downgrade year? Like, just test yourself in all sorts of ways. You never know what you can learn at whatever level you're at. Whether you're in a fast food, a clothing store, even a freaking janitor company. Even if you work for a janitor company, how much did they spend on getting in all the supplies? What is the budget that they have to pay their workers? What kind of companies did this company decide to start doing cleaning work for? What are the different fields? Like, just ask yourself all sorts of different questions. Right? Study these things, and then it's not just about asking the questions, right? Understanding the art of intention. You have to understand your intention, and then understand the intentions of the people that are walking a little bit more toward what you want to be, the people that are above you, or even if they're not in the field that you're working in right now, figure out a way to get around the people that are doing the thing and see what you can learn from them, because that's another thing. Even if you're not working in that field, there are people that get degrees and doctorates and stuff, but they might not even be coachable and trainable, and they feel like they might know everything because they got the training and stuff. And that's another thing. Even if you got the training and stuff, it's good to have people around you who are walking in that, who are already doing that, who can coach you and train you on how to fit into this thing and how to make it longevitive in your life, right? So even if you're at the bottom of the structure and the middle of the structure, getting close to the stage that you want to be at, you have to understand where you're standing in this structure, right? Because even if you do feel like you have new tools and knowledge, you have to understand where you stand in the structure. Right now, I feel like I'm an infant in the structure of things, and I'm just learning how to walk. I'm learning how to walk in this thing. And I feel like I've been feeling like that for a while, learning how to walk in this thing, because I've been training and coaching myself across multiple industries. And I feel like I grew up in the time where people started putting pressure on themselves because of the rise of Silicon Valley and all these startup companies, and trying to get perfect in college and have top SAT scores in high school and being highly competitive and trying to have an internship by the time you're done with your freshman year type of competitive, right? So that's where I'm coming from. And with the shift in social media, I see how they're trying to steamroll that out. But there's also so many different things coming. Like, I want to talk about sexuality too, because I feel like it's a big, huge conversation. Because in this day and age, there needs to be so many different conversations about people's sexuality and morals and ethics and consent, right? I already started talking about that stuff, but I want to delve a little bit deeper into it, but not right now. But so in this day and age, people are focused on trying to make money as fast as they can, because they've seen how fast people started making money off of social media, not realizing how much work it actually takes to learn and navigate social media. It's a lot of work. Okay, trust me. But it's worth it. It is worth it, but it's a lot of work, right? So in the company culture, you have to understand where you stand, how people perceive you, all this other stuff. But things are definitely different for men and for women, right? The structures are set up differently, because there's different types of men in these structures, and there's also different types of women in these structures, right? So everybody in the corporate world understands. In the corporate world, or any highly competitive field ever, this is a man's game, right? The highly competitive field. This is the packaging and the marketing that they put. This is a man's game, right? But nowadays, you see all different types of women coming together and trying to set a space for women to be the owners of their own stuff and have the ownership rights to their own stuff, running their own corporations and getting their names on the Forbes lists, all that other stuff. Women are partaking and participating in that, and there are some men that feel threatened by that, because they don't. I feel like that's a very deep conversation, because this is a man's game, and there are some men that understand why women feel the way they feel. about a lot of things, but there are some men that still don't get it because they're like, all right, so I'm out here and I'm working all day so you can get all these things, and you're complaining because you want to work too. Sometimes I wish I can sit in the house, and then yeah, everybody wants that sometimes break, whether sometimes I wish I could sit in the house break too. But at the same time, the society is getting more expensive. This society is getting very expensive because this is another thing we have to understand. The war in the upper class for resources. There's old money versus new money, but then there's also the greedy rich versus the altruistic rich. Well, at the rich that feel like they should be paying taxes and giving back to the poor at a much better rate than the greedy rich that are like, I just want to make money for myself and my family and make sure me, my family, and my friends eat, right? So the people that are running things right now operate under the greedy rich lens, where it's like, I just want to make sure me, my family, and my friends can eat. But then there are rich people that are like, look, I feel blessed and fortunate that me, my family, and my friends are eating, and some of my friends are not even eating because you guys were being greedy. And now, yeah, there are some rich people that are acknowledging, like, I feel blessed and fortunate to be able to live a little bit better than the average person. But at the same time, they understand that they have to play a game with these people too, because if you try to push too much, there are some people that are greedy rich and they have power and access to a lot of different things, right? But then there are people that are rich and they have power and access too, and it's a push and pull because they want to make sure that them and their families eat, but they also want to make sure that they have enough to create pathways and help people, right? And that's the push and pull, because there's new money, and new money is getting shifted up too, where it's like, okay, where do you stand? Do you just want to hoard all the resources, not caring about what happens to the planet? Or are you actually okay with being at fundraisers and drives and donations, and you already know you're still going to get money, but are you okay with being like giving back in some capacity, even if you could put $5,000 on it for now and then see what you can do later, something. Because you already see that the Obama and the Biden administration set up to feed the Stop End World Hunger initiative. Oh, the Obama administration started it. The Trump administration didn't want to do it, but then the Biden administration picked it back up. Him and Kamala Harris were trying to keep aiding that initiative to end world hunger and poverty by 2030, right? So, well, they were going to tackle world hunger and then try to fix the world's poverty problem, right? Because the poverty problem is a little bit deeper than ending world hunger by 2030. Whereas, like, everybody should have access to healthy food. That was the initiative, right? So, I got way off topic, but I'm just talking about this in high-level conversations. You have to be aware of speaking of company culture, what is the culture of the administration in charge of your nation or country? Do you align with that? Is there things that you need to do to be able to protect people's interests? Is there things that you can do to align with the current administration? Do you have to set up shop to help align with people's interests? Probably. But at the same time, I'm doing it slowly and taking my time because Black women's is tired. Black people, bro. But no, I'm not even gonna get into that right now. There are different types of men in these structures, right? And different types of women, right? So that was an introduction to the different types of men, right? There are men that are focused on keeping company cultures for the boys club, right? And they're like, this is boys club, and you guys are lucky that you have a seat at the table, and especially if you're black or a woman of color, you guys are lucky you got a seat at the table. And then there are men that think like this, but then there are men that are like, you know what, we know how to play with these types of powerful men, we know how to negotiate with them, don't even worry about it. We know you worked hard to get here, because some women don't, some men don't, right? No, you worked hard to get here. We already know we have to play a certain level. These are the men that see the games that are being played, and they know when they should speak up about something, and when they're just like, this is not gonna go good if you address this thing, because they understand the culture of the boys club and how to negotiate. Like, if you don't understand the culture of the boys club and how boys negotiate, that can be a hindrance. But then at the same time, as a woman, you have to understand how women negotiate too, because women negotiate similarly but different, because they know that it's perceived differently, right? So there are the men that are like, this is a boys club, women are lucky that they're even getting a seat at the table, we just want to operate in a certain level. Men, they only accept certain type of women, right? And then there are some women that they begrudgingly have to accept because they've done the work to be there. Right? So there are certain types of women that they accept in the boys club. There's the one, like I said, they begrudgingly have to accept her because she worked to get there. They might call her a ball buster. They may call her all types of different man hater names, right? So she worked to be there. It doesn't matter what they say. But then there's the one, we all know as women how sexuality works, right? Yeah, you can be pretty. But then there are women that try to take advantage of the fact that they are pretty or that they know someone. And there are men that do the same thing. But men are more likely to do because they know someone. And then there are women that women are more likely to use a mixture of both. They know someone, and they know that someone's attracted to them, and they know that they're pretty, all this other stuff, right? And it's like, you know, some women make that work for them, and that's their way of life. And society tries to teach you to look down on these women, and sometimes I've probably made snide comments and not even realized it, but the way society was set up for women for a very long time was for women to sit back and either take care of the household or commoditize their bodies, right? And we're living in a new age of people being able to commoditize their bodies. And just because someone is commoditizing their body doesn't mean that they're not a highly competitive working professional. There are different ways that women can maximize and profit off of utilizing their sexuality, sex appeal, their looks, and their body to profit, right? So, and men can also do the same thing. That's a part of the entertainment industry, that's a part of the modeling industry, and that's also a part of adult entertainment. I had to throw it in there because that's usually what people are thinking. They're usually thinking about adult entertainment. But like I said, there's modeling, there's acting, there's entertainment across the spectrum. All types of different ways where people are commoditized off of their looks and their bodies without it being overly sexual. But that's the first thing that pops in people's head is the adult entertainment industry, right? So another thing is understanding how the structures work, right? So there are different types of women that are getting commoditized, right? Are they being a working professional about it? Or are they using their body as a weapon? So you have to look out for that too, right? And then there's the woman that just fits into the boys club. There's the women that fits into the boys club because they understand how boys think. They might be attracted to women. They might be a lesbian. Sometimes they're bi, and they're okay with men culture sometimes. But then sometimes it depends. You have to sometimes women fit into the guys club when they're like that. But then sometimes it's like when the other men that are around that feels like it should be just men and everything, and they become derogatory. And sometimes you have to navigate that slippery slope where it's like, okay, yeah, I understand. Especially when you're highly competitive, no matter what highly competitive field you're in, they're going to compare that shit to a sport. Whether it's like you gotta get the winning goal, the winning touchdown, you gotta hit the target. Even if it's archery, you gotta understand these terms because it's highly competitive like that. When it's your competitors, especially in the business sales world, hitting those numbers, they start talking about their JV ball days, right? So there's a big correlation between business world and sports analogies, like a huge correlation, right? And some of them, there are some people that start betting on fantasy drafts, all that other stuff, right? And if you don't understand sports culture, you won't understand nothing that's going on half the time. And some, like, highly competitive business fields, it's a lot like that because they're working with their numbers. They're working on being the best brand. They're working on being competitive against the other team, their opponent, the other companies, right? So it's like, and then their Super Bowl is who's bringing in the biggest annual numbers at the end of the year. Which companies are bringing in the biggest annual numbers? Who brought in the most money for their country? Who brought in the most money for their nation? So lots of sports analogies, right? But in the high level women, it's a little different. Well, it's going to be either high-level sports analogies or comparing themselves to the top-level male rappers or actors, right? And the women's world is kind of the same way, but it's like the sports analogies, men usually do that, but for women, it's like you start talking about it's more like sisterhood, right? You start remembering your cheer days, your dance days, your pageant days. There are a lot of business women that have that background. Modeling days, pageant days, cheering days. Some of them have sports backgrounds, but it's mainly modeling and pageants and cheer. Modeling, pageants, cheer. Modeling, pageants, cheer. You know, because it's like, as a woman, even if you're not that into your aesthetics, you realize in the man's world, sometimes they judge things based off your aesthetics, no matter what your work ethic is, right? So it's about being the top boss diva, almost. Being the boss top diva and bringing that kind of competitive edge to, like, the women's world, right? Because women do understand the sports analogies and they'll stand around for the sports analogies, right? But it's like, sometimes you'll even hear, like, them make swim model competition references, or like something like that, or even like Olympic world champion type stuff. Whereas like they're doing what they can to be competitive in their own woman way, because some of them will talk about their sports days, but the guys like that feels more like a guy culture thing. So I feel like girls will talk more about, you know, staying on brand while staying on brand, you know, keeping yourself up while you're attacking your goals, right? Because as a girl, sometimes got to play it a little bit differently, right? Sometimes businesswomen rely more on intuition and body language, whereas like I didn't say it, but I said it. Like you'll look at each other and be like, and we had a whole conversation. Where it's like, you see what I see? Yeah, just mind your business. Yeah, I'm gonna mind my business. Back work. Yup. So, it's like, women are a little bit more subtle with that sort of thing. And it's like, women talk more about, because in the guys' culture, they just want to feel like the boss. And some women do want to feel like the boss, but women like to have fun and they want to be able to be rewarded for their experiences. So they'll talk about all the stuff that they'll be able to afford for themselves and all the things that they can do, and you know, working at a level where it's like you're handling your business, and handling your business affords being able helps you to be able to afford a lifestyle that makes you feel good about yourself. And that's a pep talk that women gives themselves, where it's like, okay, you can focus on looking good and having all these things and everything, and some it depends on the company culture that you're in, where it's like these are the group of women that are going to talk about who they know, and all, and using their connections and all the other stuff. And then there's the group of women that are like, okay, let them have their thing, because usually it's short-lived. It depends on your strength of connection and how you got that connection, right? Because sometimes those connections are short-lived. So let them do their thing, and talk about how their connections are going to afford them this and this and that. You keep having your work ethic and seeing and then you see the women around you that are going to mentor you and show you what your work ethic can afford you, what kind of lifestyle your work ethic can afford you, what kind of things that you can do, and they'll show you all the stuff that they can do. And you know, a lot of it is involved in like materialism and stuff, but it's also like being able to like talk about like mindset shifts, you know, and positive energy and intentions and stuff, right? So yeah, looking good and being able to afford things, but then they talk about your mindset shift and the different things that you can do. And then that's another thing, how are you perceived? This can affect your work ethic. There are different types of men, different types of women. Like, are you as a man in the office dogging around on all the women that you find attractive? Are you as a woman flirting with all the men that find you attractive? Are you getting work done? Are you gossiping? Whereas like sometimes you could tell the people that are going to be fine whether they're getting work done or not, because they'll gossip all day, but they'll still get the promotions and they'll still have the job. But meanwhile, like, there are the people where it's like, okay, yeah, you're really doing work, where it's like, okay, your numbers and all the things that you do speak for themselves. And sometimes people do malicious things to get ahead, and you have to figure out how you're perceived, how they're perceived, and how they actually operates, because this can affect your work ethic. If you're around people who perceive you in a negative way, or people who just generally just don't mesh with you, they don't like you, or they have something out for you and you know that, and it seems like they're trying to just doing everything they can do to ruin your day, that can affect your work ethic and your mentality. So you got to figure out when you're working, especially if you plan on being at a place at least 6 months or more, especially if you plan on being at a place a year or more, you got to figure out who gets you, who understands your work style. because that could be the saving grace to whether you keep or don't keep a job, right? So that also thinks you also have to think about, yeah, it's a job, but also how do your social styles match? And if you feel like your social style meshes positively with someone, that's a person that you should be working with, right? And then we go back to social setting, right? There's where you come from versus where you're going, right? Not everybody comes from the same social class and background, right? Everybody's not from this, does not have the same social group. Everybody does not come from the same social class. Everybody does not have the same cultural or ethnic background. So you might be coming from a place where people might perceive you a certain way. They might say you acting bougie again because you're around blah blah blah. But it's like, okay, yeah, I don't mind doing all these things. I don't mind chilling with you and like hanging out, chilling back or whatever. But I got to do this thing to make sure that I have a stable life and background, right? So it's like sometimes in a highly competitive field, it's not done after you leave work. There are people really keeping tabs on you, figuring out what you're doing, who you're around, especially if it's a company that prides itself on people, how people act when they're out that place. So it's like people might be like, why are you acting mad funny? Even if you have like a job that's like, you know, they're keeping tabs and you know they're gonna gossip and talk about what you were doing when you were not at work, even though it's not their business. Right? Where it's like, okay, I don't mind getting into some of the shenanigans, but I can't get into all the shenanigans because A, B, and C. Sometimes that's the case in some of these places. Right? So, and that's another thing. Depending on where you're coming from, and if you're excited about something and you feel like it's an accomplishment, you got to watch the people around you. Who supports you and who's going to downplay your accomplishments and act like it's not a big deal. Even though you were excited about it, you feel like it's a big deal. And they're like, that ain't nothing. That's not special. To make you feel like there's something wrong with you. Sometimes you just have to observe that. Don't take it in as anything personal. And then limit your space as you see fit. Right? Because you might still be around that person for whatever reason. But if you feel like that person, and if that person is starting to bring negativity to you, it makes you feel like you can't do it. Sometimes you just got to put yourself into distance between people when they're trying to make you feel like you can't do something. Because if you've been working at it and you got people motivating you, tell you can do it, you can do it. And you know you can do it. It's just sometimes that imposter, especially if you're coming from poverty, that imposter syndrome is real. Especially if you come from poverty and you had people telling you your whole life that you're not going to be anything and you're just going to repeat the cycle of poverty. Sometimes when you're in rooms that you've never expected, that imposter syndrome could be real, where it's like, you know, I used to be on Section 8, and now I'm in a fancy-ass ballroom where the centerpiece chandelier has glitter drop, diamond dropped style crystals on it and stuff, and there is actual live violinists and champagne flutes and stuff. Like, that stuff can be overwhelming, and sometimes you have to keep snapping yourself into it. Like, this is real. You actually worked for it. Don't sit there and feel like you're fake or something because you're not used to it. You worked to be here, no matter where you come from, right? No matter where you come from, you worked to be there. Okay? Especially if you're dealing with something like that and you worked very hard to get out of those situations. And I've made that mistake in the past where I've been in environments where I'm like, I start having anxiety because I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there. I just wasn't ready to accept my line shift yet. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there, so I start backsliding and doing all the stuff that I was doing before. Because it was like, this is where I come from. This is what I was doing. But I got myself caught up because I let imposter syndrome take over. And sometimes that can happen, right? And I've also seen that same thing where it's like a person has never experienced poverty, and then they decide to take a job in a humanitarian field, and they'll start to feel some level of imposter syndrome where it's like, this is not real to them. They don't even feel like they should be here. They feel like they're not even really helping, like this fake help, because they've seen some extravagant luxuries. And then when you're going to a humanitarian field and you see people's level of extreme poverty, sometimes I can mess with people where it's like, maybe I'm not helping like I feel like I should be helping. Because, you know, coming from wealth and then having that culture shock of seeing people barely eating, wearing the same 3 outfits all week, all month, barely anything in their fridge, having to go to DSS every day, or living where they don't have lights or working like. And then sometimes they'll go to those, or they'll go to the third world country ones where it's like they see people that don't even really have running water, and they gotta walk 10 miles, and they made their house out of clay, and they barely have any clothes, and like, then they'll feel like they're not really helping. But at the same time, you're there for a reason. Your presence matters, and you're doing what you need to be doing to help. It might not be perfect, you might not see it at first, but if you feel it in your spirit and you're supposed to be there, you're supposed to be helping. So you just gotta watch the people around you who's motivating you to keep going. And that's another thing, right? People's families, listen. You might see your child or your family member doing something that you don't agree with, but it might be reimbursing their life. It might be making them happy. It makes them happy. And if you see any danger and stuff in it, and you're there to help them if there's danger, that's great. Continue to do that. But sometimes you might have to just let people do their thing from a distance, but also do what you can to protect them. And that's all you can do as family sometimes. You might not agree with what they're doing, but that's their life and that's their decision. If they're happy and you see that it lights up something inside them, that's what should matter, right? So sometimes when your family might seem like they're downplaying their accomplishments, sometimes it's just worry and fear, and they just don't want you to make a bad decision. But sometimes, unfortunately, people don't want to see you doing better than them, and you can't help that. That's not your problem. But like I said, sometimes your families will stand in the way because they care and they don't want you to be in danger, and they want you to be safe. And when it comes to highly competitive fields, you never know how highly competitive some people will get, right? It depends on the field. Well, I won't even say it depends on the field. Some people unfortunately do well because they're antisocial psychopaths. And you never know. I was doing a study, it's in the DSM-5, about antisocial personality disorder in the corporate world. They tend to do well in corporate America. Bernie Madoff types, right? The Wolf on Wall Street guy, what's his name? Spencer Gordon? I don't think that's his name. I forgot what that dude's name was. But those are two different types of antisocial personality types, because Spencer Gordon was actually very charismatic. He had a level of charisma to him where it's like, this might seem a little seedy, but he just seems like such a good guy, right? He was good at masking and showing people what they wanted, right? Bernie Madoff, on the other hand, it was very clear. People were just kind of shivering around him. They didn't want to make eye contact. They didn't want to make him upset or whatever. He was good at being a jerk and keeping people in line. So it's like, it's very clear to see that Bernie Madoff had antisocial personality disorder. But with the Spencer guy, he was more charismatic. That's why he was able to get away with it a little bit longer. Bernie Madoff was, straight up having psychotic episodes in the middle of the office. And I don't know. I think about little stuff like this, right? So I got way off topic once again. So I don't even know how I started talking about. Oh yeah, those are two different antisocial personality types that tend to do well in corporate America, right? So like I said, there are different types of women, there are different types of men. And then the different types of women that actually support women in business, you'll see them going out of their way to be mentors to other women, going out of their way to go to women in leadership conferences, going out of their way to go in women in businesses conferences, making sure they can be of service when it comes to awarding grants and scholarships to upcoming women businesses. You'll see them out there. They're out to help women and make sure that women have a strong culture and space in their business fields. But a thing I have to say to women is there's two types of those too, right? Because there are women that just want women to have a powerful space that make women feel empowered while they're pursuing leadership positions. But then there are women that feed into toxic femininity and toxic feminism, right? Because there's two types of feminism too, whereas like there's one type of feminism that wants to uplift women, and there's one type of feminism that's toxic, that wants a certain type of women to be the face of it, and that doesn't respect men, right? So this type of women respects the brotherhood and the partnerships that men have amongst each other, right? They respect that the men need their own space and they need their own boys club, but they also want women to have their own space and to have that sisterhood amongst them and to make them feel empowered as leaders, right? But then there's the other women that wants women to feel empowered as leaders, but they want to take something away from men. And that's where the clash starts to happen, right? You have to be aware of that, right? Are there women, because there are women that literally have an agenda to weaken their leadership and partnerships between men and weaken their access to women, right? So, and there are also men that want to do the same. Like I said, there are men that want to keep it the boys club. They want women to not have that sense of respect, right? But there are a wave of women that are doing the opposite on the women spectrum, right? And all women are not operating like that, unfortunately. On the social media age, the toxic voices have the loudest voices. The toxic people have been having the loudest voices, right? Unfortunately. And they don't respect each other, and they definitely don't respect the other gender. They don't and half the times they don't even respect themselves, and they have a really serious healing to do, and they were just hurt by something that happened to them in their personal lives or something that happened to them in the world, and now they need serious healing. Especially in the highly competitive, if you're in a highly competitive field and you got scarred, that's a lot of healing that needs to take place, because highly competitive sabotage can take years to heal from, right? Sabotage in general takes a long time to heal from, but when you're dealing with highly competitive sabotage, that can take a long time. That can have people looking at you suspiciously for a couple of years, right? So that's where you have to think about your mindset shift, right? You know that you want to work in a highly competitive field, but you also know that there are things out there that you need to look out for. So there's things out there when you're pursuing that you need to look out for, and there's things that you need to look out for when it comes to interacting with the people that you've always been around, right? Because they might not understand the culture that you decided to learn and get yourself into, and they might be looking at you like, you're out of your mind if you can make this work. If you think you can make this work, but you've been working, you've been learning, you've been studying, you've been talking to mentors, you've been trying to understand the field, right? So all you gotta do now is critically give yourself a SWOT analysis and analyze where's your strength, where's your weaknesses, where can you go see the opportunities, and where are the threats against your opportunities at, and where are the threats that you haven't even thought of, right? So give yourself a big, huge SWOT analysis, analyze yourself, figure out where you're at, where you're trying to go, and how you can make it happen, right? Because when you're pursuing success, you run into a diverse amount of personalities, races, cultures, and class levels. Even people in the upper echelon deal with perception challenges and changes. Because this is a big world filled with so many different types of people. There are so many different types of people. There's success could come out of any group, right? So the mindset shift after you're learning all these different cultures, after you're solidifying what you want to do, how you fit in, and how this is like an introductory to high level stuff. So you got that mind shift, right? You're shifting your social life, your personal life, your work life, your lifestyle, your opportunities, and your access to spaces, right? So all these things are changing at once, and it can be challenging to keep up with. And sometimes you might not even noticing that. You might not even notice that it's changing because you've been focused on working on making those things change, right? When it comes to, changing your life, it's not always going to be easy. There's always challenges to encounter. But at the same time, it's possible. We live in a day and age where there are so many emerging markets. There are so many new discoveries. There's so much new stuff happening right now. Cultures are changing. Mind shifts are changing and setting. The way we socialize is changing. There are new inventions coming out. There are different thought-provoking pieces coming out. Like, everything that's happening is happening right now. And unfortunately, we're under an administration, and we're under a world culture that's trying to keep us distracted from how much we're actually changing as a society. Right? We have to, like right now, there's all this negative stuff in our face. Let's not focus on that. Let's just be innovative. Because there's a lot of innovative stuff happening still. And we can still do this. But yeah, this was my introduction. This is introduction part 2 to high level conversations. This is for men and for women who want to work in highly competitive fields across the board. Like I said, I'm going to work on being multifaceted. That's why I haven't really defined a niche. It's going to be an adventure. I plan on in the future, very soon, going on a whole host of adventures. I'm going to arrange and plan for it. Let's see how it goes. Fingers crossed. With that being said, bye. Deuces. Peace. Wow.